the long-awaited financial aid information night. And tonight, to help us, we have invited from CSI Sean Walsh, to start us off.
Yes.
Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I guess, and you have my slides, right? Those are up. You could just really go to the third slide just so I can introduce myself.
Yes, Sean, hold on 1 second.
No, take your time. Take your time.
Thank you, everyone. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, thank you.
Well, anyway, my name is Sean Walsh. I'm the Assistant Director for Orientation at the College of Staten Island. I know you're really here for a financial aid workshop, and I wanted to just go through a few things with you from CUNY, just in case any of you are interested, any of your students are interested in applying to CUNY, especially Macaulay Honors. But I'm a proud alumnus of the College of Staten Island, and I will be your dedicated advisor. So if you have any questions at the end, I'll definitely put up my contact information. Feel free to contact me. If you have any questions, there we go. So yeah, go to that third slide. That's who I am. Proud alumnus of the College of Staten Island. Coming to you, next slide, from the beautiful 204-acre campus of the College of Staten Island, the biggest campus in New York City. I have a Zoom scheduled to meet with the students on, I think, November 7th. So if any of your students are interested in learning more about the College of Staten Island, please feel free to have them join that Zoom. Next slide. So I just wanted to go over really the next two slides. You can go to the one after that too. I just wanted to go over. Go to the next one. We'll get through this fast, just so I can go through a few things with everyone here. Just so everybody knows that CUNY has its free application period. So for New York City public school students, that goes from October 27th to November 21st. So if you're interested in applying to CUNY, make sure your students are waiting for that period so you could save $65. Next slide. We have something this year that's a little different. I want to go over the Macaulay Honor application deadlines. This year we have something new, which is early decision, which is binding. As you can see on the right, only a handful of the CUNY colleges which offer Macaulay are offering this early decision option: Baruch, Brooklyn, us, CSI, Hunter, and Queens. So the deadline for that is November 3rd. We have a few days left after that to get your letters of recommendation in, November 10th. And then you'll hear a decision from us on the 17th of February, and we expect you to commit by March 2nd. Those who are not interested in that early decision binding option, we have our regular Macaulay Honors deadline, November 17th. The 28th letters of recommendation are due. We'll notify those students on the 16th of March, and commitment deadline is, for everyone else, May 1st. You can go to the next slide. There's also a fast op option. This is not for Macaulay students. Anybody who's interested in applying regular freshmen, we have this fast app, which is great. You just put in your OSIS number, and you get to go through that application even faster. Again, that's not for Macaulay students. Next slide is our deadlines if you're interested in applying. And this goes for all of CUNY, really. February 1st, decision day, like I said, May 1st. And if you're interested in applying to one of our other honor programs, Verizon or Teja, I can talk more about that on November 7th. Those are supplemental applications. We are test optional. CUNY is test optional, even for Macaulay, through the spring 27. And next slide, we have an open house coming up on October 26th. So if you're interested in coming and checking out the College of Staten Island, please feel free to attend. And there's a QR code. I can share that with anyone. Next slide has my email address. Feel free to definitely contact me. If you have any questions, that is me. My name is Sean. I'm here to help all students at Staten Island Tech in your decision with the College of Staten Island. With that, I know you're all here right now. You really want to hear about financial aid. You don't want to hear from me. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague. So allow me to introduce the Enrollment Services Coordinator, Michael Adamo. Michael.
Come on. Okay. Okay, I'm going to let Michael come on in, and I'm going to remove myself and Miss Devine. Michael, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. So as Sean said, my name is Michael Adamo. I am the Enrollment Services Coordinator at the College of Staten Island, and we will go through the financial aid process from pretty much start to finish, what you need to be aware of when you are starting the FAFSA application, as well as through the state aid process itself. For our FAFSA, you'd have to fill it out regardless of what college you'd be attending. For TAP, New York State Aid, you'd only fill out that application if you plan on attending a New York State college. So on the first slide, on the next slide.
Sorry, Michael, I'm having a few technical difficulties. Just bear with me, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I can kind of go through some of the application. The 2026-2027 FAFSA became available on October 1st. So if you were able to at least start the application now, that's great. What the application entails is if the student is considered dependent, which I'm sure most of the students in here would be considered, you would need to create an FSA ID for yourself and for your parents. So some of the topics we will discuss are the overview, the application process, New York State financial aid, as well as what is new with the application, because due to the new administration, there are slight changes to the current process that we have right now. So on the next slide, financial aid is essentially funding that is provided to students and families to help pay for their educational expenses. This amount would go up to the cost of attendance, which I will explain to you in a little while. And financial aid can be considered need-based, which is the federal Pell Grants and the New York State grant, or non-need based, which would be an unsubsidized direct loan. So on the next slide, the types of financial aid that are available to students would be through the federal government. That would be your federal Pell Grant, your subsidized, unsubsidized loans, as well as a Parent Plus loan. New York State, that is the TAP application. That is the Excelsior Scholarship. That is additional scholarships that are available. Colleges and universities, a lot of colleges and universities offer students the opportunity to receive scholarship money or additional funding to help pay for their educational expenses. Private sources, mainly private loan lenders, and employers. I know sometimes employees do allow their employers to receive funding to help their students' cost of education. So if you are interested in that, I would say reach out to your human resources department to see if they would have something available for you. So the types of financial aid that there are 4 types mainly. Grants, which do not need to be repaid back by the federal government. So if you fill out the applications and you are entitled to receive a grant, that does not need to be paid back. Loans, which is money that needs to be repaid after the student would drop below 6 credits or graduate. That would include any post-secondary education, such as master's or doctoral programs. So if the student is continuously enrolled in 6 credits, they would not need to start making payments on that loan. Scholarships, which typically do not need to be repaid, and they're usually based upon merit, or employment opportunities through the federal work-study program. If the student is entitled to receive work-study, what that happened then is their financial aid office would reach out to them, indicate that they are a work-study recipient, and the student would work on campus or off campus. And based upon however many hours they work, they would receive money to cover whatever expense they may need. So on the next slide, the cost of attendance, which is what I went into a little bit before, is essentially what costs a student would need to attend college or university. Direct costs are anything that you would see on a student's account. This would include tuition, fees, if a student is in housing at that university, the housing costs, as well as if they are enrolled in a college or university meal plan, the college and university meal plan. Indirect costs are things that are not associated on the student's online portal for that college. However, they would need to be aware of it, such as transportation costs, housing costs, miscellaneous expenses, books, so on and so forth. These 2 figures amount to what the student's cost of attendance is, and the cost of attendance is essentially the amount of funding that is expected that the student would need to attend college for that academic year. Students are not able to receive more financial aid than their cost of attendance, and because it does vary by school, whichever college you want to apply for, you can reach out to that financial aid office to see how much the cost of attendance would be for each university. So there are a few financial aid programs on both the federal and New York State side. The federal side, there is the federal Pell Grant. There's also the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, FSEOG, federal work study, direct loans. As I said before, they can be subsidized and unsubsidized. Parent Plus loans, which a student would essentially fill out an application that the parent would take out a loan in the student's name to help pay for the student's cost of education. Any additional information regarding these federal programs can be viewed on studentaid.gov. If you are attending a New York State college, you should fill out the New York State programs, or at least review the New York State programs, such as the Tuition Assistance Program, which is TAP. Students who are not going to be registered full-time, but registered between 3 to 11 credits, can receive what is called a part-time TAP award. If a household makes less than $125,000, the student could potentially be eligible for the Excelsior Scholarship if they plan on attending a SUNY or CUNY college, or the Enhanced Tuition Award if they will be attending a private college. That amount that they would receive would be up to $3,465 per semester to receive that scholarship. There are other additional programs that CUNY does offer. So if you are interested in applying for a CUNY college, you can reach out to that college's admissions office to see if they have opportunity programs such as ASAP or CCD, as well as the Peter Valone Scholarship. If you are interested in reviewing the New York State applications, you can visit their website, which is hesc.ny.gov. Now, it does begin with the FAFSA, and what the FAFSA determines is your eligibility for federal financial aid. Like I was saying before, the 2026-2027 application is available now. And based upon the completion of the application, a student would receive what is called a student aid index. And that amount does determine a student's eligibility for a federal Pell Grant as well as a subsidized loan. This must be completed before you complete the New York State aid applications, as well as colleges would need this completed in order to be potentially considered for scholarship opportunities. If you do have issues completing the application, you can reach out to FAFSA directly, or whichever college you plan on attending. You can see if that college does offer FAFSA filing help through their university themselves. So on the next slide, key changes regarding the application itself is a real-time identity verification. In years past, you had to essentially upload documentation to verify your identity if they were unable to do so. Right now, it's in real time. The contributor invitation is much simpler now than in years past. For foreign income, you would have to report that if your parent earned foreign income in the year 2024, as well as a small business exemption has been recalculated. So when you are reporting these figures, it would essentially inform you what you would need to be aware of when you are reporting that information. So on the next slide, as I said before, the SAI is the student aid index that determines your eligibility for a federal Pell Grant and subsidized loan. The maximum amount of your SAI would be negative 1,500 to zero. If the student aid index equals the sum of the parent's available income, the student's income and assets would go against the poverty level, and there will be an automatic amount based upon the AGI. So if your parent's household has an AGI over a certain amount, you would not be eligible for any federal Pell Grant based upon that income. On the next slide, what a federal Pell Grant would be is it allows students to get up to $7,395 for the academic year to help pay for their costs of education. This would be a full-time status, which would be at least 12 credits or more. And because that is for the amount for the year, the maximum amount you can get per semester would be $3,697.50. A federal SEOG award, if you are attending a CUNY college, will be based upon the availability of the funding, and you need to be registered for at least 6 credits for that. In order to potentially receive that award, we do suggest students fill out the FAFSA as soon as possible. So since it is available now, you should be able to complete that application. And as I was saying before, for federal work study, you would need to be registered for at least 6 credits to potentially receive an on-campus position through the financial aid office. So when you are starting the application itself, this is what it would look like. You are going to make sure to complete the 2026-2027 FAFSA. Both the 2026-2027 and 2025-2026 applications are available. As incoming freshmen for the fall 2026 semester, you want to complete the 2026-2027 application. So when you get to their landing page, you would click on Start New Form, and then it would prompt you to start the actual application process itself. So when you get to the login page, if you have not done so already, you would need to create an FSA ID. What is important with this FSA ID is this is used throughout your academic career, as well as your master's or doctoral degrees if you pursue further education. So it is important that you use an email that you will have the entire time, preferably a personal email such as Gmail, AOL, Yahoo, whatever case you have. We do encourage students to not use their school emails. So make sure you use an email that you'll have contact with the entire time, and make sure you do remember the passwords. When you are filling out the application, it will ask you for dependency questions. If you are a student who lives with your parents, you don't have anyone that you support, you don't have children, you're not married or anything like that, you more than likely will need to provide your parents' information. If you have an unusual circumstance that prevents you from providing your parents' information, we suggest you reach out to the college's financial aid office once you complete the application, because you may need to submit an additional documentation to show that you don't have contact with your parent, or that you have a circumstance that prevents you from providing their information. So on the next slide, if you do become an independent student, as you can see on the screen, your FAFSA isn't processed until you would need to submit the documentation to whatever college you'd be attending. If you are provisionally independent, that is where the college you will be attending will reach out to you, and where you'd have to submit in documentation for them to verify. And then once it is verified, they would be able to determine your eligibility for the federal Pell Grant and student loans. If your parent is willing to provide information, then you can. If your parent is unwilling to provide information, is one thing that you can do, and that would be to indicate that you do not want, or your parents do not want to provide their information, which in that case, you'd only be eligible for an unsubsidized loan only. If that is the case for the student, you should reach out to the college's financial aid office once your application is processed and inform them that your parents are unwilling to provide their information, and they would let you know what your next course of action would be in order to secure that loan. If your parents are willing to provide their information, you would need to provide both parents' information if they are married. If your parents are not married, you would put whatever parent supports you more than 50%. So if you live with one parent, you're more than likely providing that parent's information. Also, to be aware, if your parents file tax returns separately but are considered married, both parents would need to create an FSA ID, because FAFSA pulls the tax information from the IRS. So if you do have mixed filing status where one parent would be head of household and the other parent would be married filing separately, both parents would need to create an FSA ID for that. So after you complete the application, it does bring you to this student acknowledgement page. On that acknowledgement page, it does just give you a brief overview of what the application itself. As a student, you must submit the application signature in order for the application to be processed. Once you submit in the signature, as you see on the next slide, it would prompt you to say, congratulations, your portion of the FAFSA is completed. So the next slide would show you that, as well as it would show you the parent's invitation section. When you send the invitation to your parent, they would need to use their own email. They would not be able to use the same email that you used to create your account. So the student would create the account with their email and personal information, and the parent would need to create the account with their email and their personal information. If you are a parent who already has a student in college, you would be able to use the same FSA ID login information to complete all of the applications. If you also have multiple students in college, once you complete one application and you input your information in another student's application, it will essentially skip over the process of needing to resubmit the entire application, as your information would already be transferred over. So once the student completes their portion, this is where the parent would get invited. Essentially, the student would need to enter the parent's email address for them to complete their portion of the application. And the invitation link or invitation code can be shared directly, which is a much simpler process than in previous years. Because last year, the parent would need to get the invitation, go into their email and do it themselves. This year, they did make it a little easier where you can just copy the link directly. So once the parent accepts the email or uses the invitation link or the code to complete the application, they would, like I said, need to log into their application to complete the process. And that is when the parent would need to sign in with their FSA ID to access the invitation for the FAFSA. So on the next slide, the parent, like I said before, would need to provide consent for the IRS. Again, if the parents file tax returns married, filing joint, or if it is a single parent, only one parent would need to provide consent to transfer this information over. What essentially is being transferred over is your tax filing status, how much income you earned or reported, just so the information does submit from the IRS so we can determine your eligibility for an award. Once you provide consent, there is additional personal information that would need to be provided. But once you get through that process, on the next slide, similarly to what the student needed to do, the parent would submit and sign the application. Once the parent submits and signs the application, you will get a prompt that will tell you the FAFSA is completed, which should be on the next slide. And once the FAFSA is completed, that is when the colleges that you list on the application will receive your FAFSA once it is processed. You are able to list up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA. So whichever colleges you list should receive the completed application. So once you do get acceptance in that college, they can inform you what your eligibility for the federal Pell Grant and subsidized or unsubsidized loan would be. Once the FAFSA is processed, it would bring you to this FAFSA submission landing page, which you can go over your eligibility overview, what and how you answered the FAFSA, what schools you listed on the application, and what your next steps would be. I know it's a little blurry, but on this page, on the eligibility overview, it does tell you your eligibility for a federal Pell Grant, your loan eligibility, both subsidized and unsubsidized, as well as if you would be eligible for a federal work study award. It also, like I said, determines what your SAI is. If your SAI is between negative 1,500 and zero, that is when you would receive that amount of $7,395 for the academic year. If it is anywhere above zero to about, I think, 7,000, you would have a Pell Grant adjusted accordingly. If it's anything over 7,000, you're not eligible for a federal Pell Grant. Now, we mainly talked about the FAFSA and the federal Pell Grant, but now we're going to transition into student loans. As I was saying before, there are two types of student loans. The first one is a subsidized loan. This is need-based, so as long as your SAI is less than your cost of attendance, you would be eligible for the subsidized portion. The main difference between the subsidized and unsubsidized portion is the subsidized portion does not accrue interest while the student is in college. The unsubsidized amount accrues interest the day that it is dispersed out to the student. For a Parent Plus loan, like I said before, this would be a loan in the parent's name to help fund the student's educational expenses. That, similarly to the unsubsidized loan, will accrue interest the day that is dispersed out to you. In order to receive a student loan, you must have a complete and valid FAFSA on file. You must also complete what's called the entrance counseling and master promissory note on studentaid.gov. Those two steps inform students what a loan is, what to be aware of, how to pay it back, who to contact, as well as other things that students need to be aware of throughout the loan process, as well as the student needs to be enrolled at least half time, which would be at least 6 credits. For students, their subsidized and or unsubsidized loan limit for incoming freshmen, which would be 0 to 29.9 credits, would be $5,500 as a dependent student. If the student is independent, they can receive an additional $4,000 to make it $9,500. The subsidized amount of each amount would be up to $3,500 based upon your eligibility. And as you can see on the chart, the further you progress throughout your academic career, the more eligibility for a loan you'd have. So once the student would be considered a sophomore level, which is 30 to 59.9 credits, a dependent student would be eligible for $6,500, and an independent student would be eligible for $10,500. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, the current subsidized and unsubsidized interest rate is 6.39%. And for Parent Plus loan, that is 8.94%. That is based upon the current 2025-2026 rates. For next year, we probably won't know the interest rates until sometime in May. So you would be able to check in with the college at that point to see what the loan interest rate would be. So going into New York State financial aid programs, I know there is a lot listed on here. Key ones that students are potentially eligible for would be the New York State TAP application, the Excelsior Scholarship or Enhanced Tuition Award, the World Trade Center Memorial Scholarship, which that is a scholarship that if your parent participated in 9/11, you would potentially receive a scholarship based upon that, as well as they have a STEM technology incentive. They have a math and science scholarship for teaching incentive. So New York State does offer a decent amount of scholarships based upon what your intended major would be. So if you are interested in a STEM field or a math and science teaching incentive, you would be able to review that program status itself to see how you could potentially be eligible for them. The actual TAP application, if you see on the next slide, is relatively similar to what the FAFSA is. The main difference, though, between the TAP application and the FAFSA now is you have to manually input your New York State tax return information on the TAP application itself. So you would need to provide a copy of your New York State tax return, which is the IT 201. So when you are filling out the TAP, you would need to provide whatever your net taxable income would be for that year, and that is how they would calculate your eligibility for an award. Another key difference between FAFSA and TAP is TAP, you're only allowed to list one school code at a time. So if you do plan on attending a college in New York State, I encourage students to pick whichever one they would get into or they would want to go if they get into every college, and then you could always adjust it accordingly from there. So on the next slide, the income limits to receive a TAP award for the net taxable income is $125,000 for dependent students. If you're an independent student who is married, it would be $60,000. If you are an independent student who is single, that would be $30,000. And this would be tax information for 2024. So the Excelsior Scholarship is the New York State scholarship where a student can receive up to $3,465, similar to the Enhanced Tuition Award, if they register for at least 12 credits, which is a full-time status each academic semester, and complete 30 credits each academic year. If you receive this scholarship, you would have to remain in New York State for the amount of the duration that you receive the scholarship for it to remain a scholarship. If you do not stay in New York for the 4-year period, if you receive it for all 4 years, it would turn into an interest-free loan. Something also to be aware of with this is if you are taking any current college level or AP courses, those credits can count to that 30 credit eligibility for an academic year if you do not complete 30 credits in any year. So the next slide is, like I said, with the contract itself, because you do have to sign a contract with Excelsior once you submit the application and are approved of it, it does have all the information that is pertinent to be aware of. So just make sure you do review that information before you submit it, so you're aware of at least what to be, aware of. Also, just so you know, the Excelsior Scholarship is a last dollar tuition award. So if you do receive a federal Pell Grant or TAP award that is greater than your tuition balance or up to your tuition balance, you wouldn't receive the Excelsior Scholarship because your tuition balance would already be covered. Now, if you do not meet the citizenship eligibility for federal financial aid, you would be able to apply for the Jose Peralta Dream Act. If you do meet these criteria, you would have to fill out the Jose Peralta Dream Act application first. And then if you are approved, you would then fill out the TAP application itself. So on the next slide, there is something new that is called the alternative pathway eligibility. This would be for more so students whose parents are uncomfortable filling out the FAFSA, but the student themselves are U.S. citizens. If the student does go this route, they would potentially be eligible for New York State financial aid, even though they don't fill out the federal Pell Grant. If you can see on here, you can visit hes.ny.gov, and it would provide you with a questionnaire, and that questionnaire would let you know if you need to complete the TAP application, the Jose Peralta Dream Act, or the alternative eligibility pathway. Now, that's pretty much it for the presentation themselves. We can open up a brief Q&A if you do have any questions, and I could just go through them. If you don't have any questions, that's fine as well. I know Sean gave his contact information before, so if you don't think of something now, you can just go on later on.
All right.
Okay, so
we have a few coming in.
Okay. So I've already applied FAFSA for my current child as a sophomore. Do I need to apply a new FAFSA account for my other daughter who's a senior in high school? So this goes back to what I was saying a little bit before. So you as the parent would not need to create a new FSA ID because you're only allowed one FSA ID per your social security number. So you as the parent wouldn't need to create another one. But your student in high school right now they would need to create an FSA ID for themselves in order for them to complete the FAFSA. Once they complete their section of the application, they would invite you to complete your portion of the application. FAFSA does include private schools as well. It's not just open for public schools. So I do know private schools use it to determine your eligibility for student loans or for college or university program awards. So you would need to fill that out even if the student is going to private school.
Well, I don't see any more questions, but at this time, if you have questions, now's the time to ask them. Put them in the chat, and I will display them onto the presentation. I think, Michael, you're getting off easy right now.
It's either a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, right. Anybody have any other questions before we kind of bring this to a close? All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Do you have anything else, Michael, you need to share? Is that pretty much the end?
There's really nothing now. What I will say though is right now, if you complete the application, because you are just, submitting your applications to colleges, even though it's processed on your end, the colleges or universities won't more than likely receive the applications until you are active in their system, which means you are a admitted student to that college. So I would suggest reaching out to them probably sometime in January. That's when you should receive the financial aid offers from each college. So if you have any questions at that point in time regarding your eligibility, or if you can receive any, university funding, you should reach out to them probably sometime in January or early February.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to end the live now at this point. We will share this presentation on our website as well as our YouTube channel. Okay. I'm going to